Charlotte Benson, an exceptionally successful female CEO, despite her company's continuous string of brilliant achievements, has always harbored an unnameable unease, a sense that something was amiss beneath the surface of glossy numbers and dazzling reports. Determined to uncover the truth, Charlotte made a bold decision. She would disguise herself as an ordinary janitor, silently immersing herself in her employees' daily world to witness firsthand their lives, emotions, and behaviors. What seemed like a simple test soon led her to a series of shocking discoveries, forcing Charlotte to confront the darker side of her own organization, where every value and ideal she once believed in faced its greatest challenge. Why did Charlotte's decision to go undercover lead to such unexpected climaxes and conflicts? And what hidden corners did her journey reveal, paving the way for a transformation in an institution she thought she knew inside and out? In the glass-roofed office on the top floor of Bright Vision's headquarters, the premier tech conglomerate of Silicon Valley, the sun's rays poured through expansive panes of glass, reflecting brilliant light onto the long row of desks, where senior directors raised their glasses in celebration. The applause resonated like rolling waves, and congratulatory cheers echoed. "Congratulations, Charlotte. Another stellar quarter. Bright Vision has set a new record." The media had dubbed her the queen of 21st century technology, and employees reveled in the festive atmosphere. Yet amid all the glory, Charlotte Benson, an African-American woman and the first to reach such heights, stood quietly, her deep-set eyes fixed on the vast window. Below lay a bustling cityscape, traffic streaming endlessly, and a giant billboard announcing Bright Vision's latest product, dominating one corner of the boulevard. Everything appeared perfect, but in Charlotte's heart stirred an indescribable emptiness. She had journeyed a rugged path from a humble farming community in rural Georgia, overcoming countless prejudices and pressures to reach today's summit. She once believed that as long as her company kept growing, her products kept innovating, and profits kept breaking records, that was true success. But today's applause, the selfies with the board, and the hollow praise only sharpened her awareness of the gap between her and something essential she had held on to since the company's founding. Stepping out of the boardroom, Charlotte paused, beside the window, placing her hand on the cold glass tabletop. Her phone vibrated. An email from Human Resources. Q2 2024 Employee Satisfaction Survey Report urgent. Charlotte opened the attached PDF and skimmed through the charts, which were glowing red. Employee satisfaction had plunged to its lowest point since she took the helm. Beneath the anonymous comments, recurring phrases jumped out. Hostile work environment, not being heard, favoritism in promotions, feeling like just a number. Coldness from superiors. Charlotte froze. The words cut straight into her mind. For years, she had taken pride in the open culture, diversity, and fairness she worked so hard to cultivate. And yet, beneath the surface of that glittering facade, Bright Vision was colder and more distant than ever. In that moment, with the applause fading behind the door, Charlotte realized that if she truly wanted to uncover the truth, she could no longer sit atop the tower, judging by numbers or flattery. It was time for her to step down, to see with her own eyes, listen with her own ears, and touch the darkest corners of Bright Vision. A crucial decision began to take shape, and from that point on, Charlotte's path as CEO would veer in an entirely new direction, not only for her company, but also for her own values and ideals. Charlotte's unease remained palpable, even after she closed the survey email, and it followed her into the expansive executive conference room, where sunlight poured through thick glass panes, flooding the glossy oak table. Inside, Marcus Hayes and Jessica Evans were already waiting, each wearing an expression weighed down by the cold, hard numbers displayed on the large screen at the far end of the room. Marcus, a white American man in his early 50s, who had been Charlotte's unwavering rock throughout the company's rapid expansion, nervously tapped his fingers on a stack of papers, his normally confident gaze now streaked with doubt. Beside him, Jessica Evans, an Asian American woman known for her sharp mind and careful speech, her eyes faintly shadowed from sleepless nights spent working with HR, kept flipping through her tablet, cross-checking the latest charts and figures. Charlotte took her seat at the head of the table, her voice calm but frosty. "We all know why we're here. I want candid feedback. No sugarcoating." Marcus spoke first, attempting to sound upbeat. "I think this is just the inevitable aftermath of hypergrowth, Charlotte. When a company expands too fast, internal friction is unavoidable. Like every year, we run a few team-building programs, tweak benefits here and there, and things smooth over." Jessica looked at Charlotte and stifled a sigh, then swiped her tablet screen and read slowly. "Employee satisfaction is down 17% compared to last year. In particular, feelings of being undervalued, favoritism in promotions, leadership disconnected from reality, all have spiked in engineering, operations, and even support." Some comments are harsh. "I'm just a ghost walking the halls, and this company cares only about metrics, forgetting who we are." Charlotte paused, staring intently at Jessica. "Are there specific names mentioned, or is this just general, grumbling?" Jessica hesitated, her eyes darting to Marcus before returning to her screen. "There's mention of favoritism by several mid-level managers. Linda Parker in operations comes up the most. Some say Linda's department only picks insiders, shutting out seasoned candidates. There are also complaints about Brian Mitchell's IT team. People who propose new ideas get sidelined unless they're in the boss's circle." Marcus cut in, his tone protective. "Jessica, we have to understand that these comments could be personal gripes. Anyone dropped from a project can get upset. We shouldn't let a few negative voices skew our overall assessment." But Charlotte remained unmoved by those excuses. Her gaze swept across their faces like a blade. "Marcus, that kind of dismissal is exactly what's dangerous. If we keep rationalizing and saying it's the same everywhere, eventually everything gets buried under a veneer of success. I refuse to let Bright Vision become a company that's monumentally successful by the numbers, but a colossal failure in human terms." Jessica ventured a suggestion, choosing her words carefully. "Perhaps we could increase allowances, offer more flexible work-from-home options, maybe host more meet and greets to rebuild team cohesion. In reality, most large companies handle things this way, and over time, they recover." Charlotte shook her head slightly, her tone resolute. "We're only addressing the tip of the iceberg. I need something real, something at the root. How can we know what's truly happening if we only sit here reading spreadsheets?" The air in the room grew thick, and every movement seemed to slow. A heavy silence stretched on for a full minute. Suddenly, Charlotte closed her eyes for a moment, and in her mind rang the Words of that old mentor back in Georgia. If you want to understand an organization, live as the lowest level in it. Observe how they look at you. Listen to their conversations, and you will know what the organization really is. She opened her eyes and looked directly at her colleagues. I've made a decision. I will find the truth myself. I will live and work as the lowest-ranked person at Bright Vision, a janitor, a completely anonymous employee. I want to see with my own eyes, hear with my own ears, and feel with my own hands. Marcus blinked in shock, then laughed, thinking Charlotte was joking. Jessica's eyes went wide, disbelief clear on her face. You mean disguise yourself as a cleaning staff member? You, personally. Charlotte offered a cold smile, but her eyes blazed with steely resolve. Exactly. I will be Charlie Baker, a new member of the cleaning crew. Only then will I uncover Bright Vision's true roots. No one spoke another word. Silence and unease rippled through the closed room. In a hidden corner, the looming silhouettes of Linda and the other mid-level managers, the very villains implied by those survey results, felt more real than ever. And Charlotte knew that her journey into the dark side of corporate power was only just beginning. Charlotte's resolve was like a hidden undercurrent, spreading quickly and unsettling all the familiar norms of this ivory tower of power. Before Marcus could fully recover from his shock, and Jessica could find words to dissuade her, Charlotte coldly laid out each concrete step. The executive conference table, once the epicenter of multi-million-dollar deals, now became her disguised strategy room, strewn with sticky notes, files, and forged resumes. Though Marcus did not fully support the plan, he found himself swept up in Charlotte's relentless momentum. He was tasked with discreetly contacting their partner cleaning company and handling the paperwork to hire a temporary janitor. Meanwhile, Jessica, meticulous with every detail, was responsible for constructing a flawless backstory for Charlie Baker. Born in 1979 in Atlanta, previously employed at a lumber mill, divorced, moved to California after a family crisis, and recently applying to Bright Vision's cleaning crew in hopes of turning her life around. Every detail, address, social security number, medical records, was fabricated down to the last comma. Charlotte practiced her posture and gait with utmost seriousness. She deliberately shortened her stride, hunched her shoulders, moved slowly, and abandoned the confident bearing of a CEO accustomed to commanding armies. Jessica coached her to speak with a faint southern drawl, tinged with weariness and humility. One evening, the three of them stood before the large mirror as Jessica offered constant feedback. Shoulders a bit lower, Charlie. When you're talking, don't look people directly in the eye. They'll think you're socially awkward. Marcus produced his tarnished silver wedding band from his pocket. Wear this so people believe Charlie recently went through a divorce. Those small details will help you blend into the cleaning crew. Finally, Charlotte decided to sacrifice her long, luxurious black hair, which had become a symbol of her style. She went to a small late-night salon, asked the stylist to chop it off and dye it a light brown, cut in blunt bangs, and curl the ends, just as many middle-aged Southern women often do. When she looked in the mirror afterward, Charlotte no longer recognized the powerful Bright Vision CEO. Instead, she saw a sun-kissed woman whose eyes held a quiet sadness, carrying the weight of a stormy everyday life on her shoulders. On the last night before showtime, Charlotte's apartment was bathed in the warm glow of her bedside lamp. Daniel Benson, her tall husband with resolute yet gentle eyes, sat beside her. He studied her silently as she changed into the worn green janitor's uniform and pinned Charlie Baker on the pocket. Charlotte offered a small, nervous smile. "I've prepared everything. No one will recognize me." Daniel moved closer and gently wrapped his arm around her shoulders. His warmth anchored her in the vast, lonely sea Charlotte felt inside. "You're crazy, Charlotte. But if anyone in this world has the guts to live someone else's life just to protect their own convictions, it's definitely you." Charlotte lifted her head, her eyes no longer trembling but shining with conviction, not just in herself, but in the inherent worth of every ordinary person in this company. "I'm doing this not only for Bright Vision but for myself, for all the people who have been forgotten." Outside the window, the city's lights still glittered. Inside Charlotte, that night marked a profound transformation, where a CEO was willing to relinquish every privilege and start over from scratch to find the true light for her company. The anxiety lingered in Charlotte's chest as she closed the survey email, following her into the expansive executive meeting room, where sunlight streamed through thick glass panes flooding the polished oak table. Inside, Marcus Hayes and Jessica Evans waited, each wearing expressions weighed down by the stark numbers displayed on the large screen at the far end of the room. Marcus, a white American man in his 50s who had been Charlotte's unshakable pillar throughout the years of the company's expansion, shifted uncomfortably, tapping his fingers on a stack of papers. His usually confident gaze now flickered with doubt. Beside him, Jessica Evans, an Asian American woman known for her sharp intellect and painstaking attention to detail, her eyes faintly shadowed from nights spent poring over HR reports, scrolled through her tablet, double-checking the latest charts. Charlotte slipped into the seat at the head of the table, her voice calm but cutting. "We all know why we're here. I want honest feedback, no sugarcoating." Marcus leaned forward first, striving to sound upbeat. "I think this is just the inevitable fallout from our rapid growth. Charlotte, when a company expands too fast, internal conflict is unavoidable. Like any other year, we can run a few team-building events, tweak benefits here and there, and things will smooth over." Jessica glanced at Charlotte, stifled a sigh, then swiped her tablet screen and read deliberately. "Employee satisfaction is down 17% compared to last year. Specifically, feelings of being undervalued, favoritism in promotions, and leadership disconnected from reality have spiked in engineering, operations, and even support. Some of the comments are harsh. I'm just a ghost roaming the halls, and this company only cares about metrics, forgetting who we are." Charlotte paused, her gaze locking onto Jessica. "Are their names mentioned, or is this just general grumbling?" Jessica hesitated, her eyes flicking to Marcus before returning to her screen. "There's mention of favoritism from certain mid-level managers. Linda Parker in operations comes up the most. Some say Linda's department only hires insiders, shutting out longtime employees. There are also complaints about Brian Mitchell's IT team. If you propose a new idea, and you're not in the boss's inner circle, you're sidelined." Marcus interjected, his tone protective. "Jessica, we have to remember that these might just be personal grievances. Anyone dropped from a project would be upset. We shouldn't let a few negative voices skew our overall perspective." But Charlotte's expression didn't waver. Her eyes swept over them like a blade. "Marcus, That kind of dismissal is exactly what's dangerous. If we keep rationalizing and saying it's the same everywhere, we'll end up burying everything under a facade of success. I refuse to let Bright Vision become the kind of company that's phenomenally successful on paper, but a colossal failure when it comes to humanity. Jessica ventured hesitantly. Maybe we can increase stipends, offer more work-from-home flexibility, host additional gatherings to rebuild team cohesion. In reality, many large companies handle issues this way, and over time, things settle down. Charlotte shook her head, her tone resolute. We're only addressing the tip of the iceberg. I need something real, something at the root. How can we understand what's really happening if we just sit here and read spreadsheets? The air in the room grew heavy and every movement seemed to slow. A tense silence stretched for a full minute. Suddenly, Charlotte closed her eyes briefly, recalling the words of her old mentor back in Georgia. If you want to understand an organization, live as the lowest rank in it. See how people treat you. Listen to what they say, and you'll know the truth of the organization. Opening her eyes, she looked both of them in the face. I've made a decision. I'm going to find out the truth myself. I will live and work as the lowest-ranked person at Bright Vision, a janitor entirely, anonymous. I want to see with my own eyes, hear with my own ears, and feel with my own hands. Marcus blinked in shock, then laughed as if he thought she was joking. Jessica's eyes went wide in disbelief. You mean disguise yourself as a custodial worker? You personally? Charlotte offered a faint, almost eerie smile, her eyes aflame with determination. Exactly. I will be Charlie Baker, a new member of the cleaning crew. Only then can I get to the real root of Bright Vision. No one spoke another word. Silence and apprehension rippled through the room. In a hidden corner, the specters of Linda and the other mid-level managers, implied villains from those survey comments, loomed larger than ever, and Charlotte knew her journey into the dark side of corporate power was only just beginning. When the long night of preparation finally passed, Charlotte stepped out the door wearing the faded green uniform, a baseball cap shading the intelligent brow that had once graced every major business magazine. Her heart pounded unusually fast, not from fear of exposure, but from the strange loneliness of someone who had suddenly lost every privilege she once held. She didn't enter through the main entrance, where receptionists usually greeted employees with a polite nod, and polished glass walls each morning reflected the image of the powerful CEO. Instead, she turned toward the service entrance beside the parking lot, a path reserved for those invisible departments like maintenance, cleaning, and distribution. At the guard's desk, Tim Johnson, a young man who always greeted the executives with a cheery smile, barely glanced at Charlotte as she approached. "Where's your badge?" he asked, sounding half asleep. Charlotte's hand trembled slightly as she presented the Charlie Baker ID card that Jessica had painstakingly prepared. Tim took it, glanced at it quickly, then shook his head and gestured. "Basement, left hall. The janitorial office. Try not to wander up to the executive floors." The basement corridor was devoid of natural light, lit only by long rows of fluorescent bulbs. The chill from the air conditioning mingled with the lingering scent of cleaning chemicals. Each footstep echoed in solitude, and every corner felt coldly unfamiliar. For the first time, Charlotte felt anything but the owner of this building. The janitorial team's small office was cramped. Old metal lockers lined one corner, the desktop coated in dust, and a bulletin board pinned with duty, rosters, and warning notices. Doris Wilson, the head of the cleaning crew, a Mexican-American woman in her 50s whose salt and pepper hair was hastily pinned up, looked up at Charlotte with eyes that had grown accustomed to seeing one newcomer after another. Her hoarse voice held no hint of welcome. "You must be the new Charlie, right? Hope you last longer than the last one. Nobody here stays more than 3 months. We do the work, and the higher-ups don't even acknowledge we exist. Pays crap. You're fetching scrub buckets all day. And if anything goes wrong, tough luck. You won't hear a thank you or even a look from the big bosses." Charlotte swallowed hard, nodded, and tried to mask her shock. Doris shoved a stack of documents into her hand: chemical handling instructions, safety procedures, and a floor plan. "Listen, Charlie, you gotta memorize the cleaning schedule for every floor, every section. Don't talk much, don't ask weird questions, and under no circumstances get involved in the higher-ups' business. If you want to keep your head down, just finish your work and go home." Doris led Charlotte out of the office down the long hallway of storage closets. "Here's the supply cart. There's your mop bucket. And over there are the window cleaning chemicals. Be extra careful near the executive floors. Drop something, make noise, and you'll be out the door faster than you can blink." All morning, Charlotte passed through spaces that had once been her kingdom: the grand lobby, the executive hallway, where powerful meetings had been held under her command. But in that green uniform, pushing a rickety cart, nobody looked up. The technician sidestepped her without a glance. The management team chattered loudly as if she didn't exist, and the security guard even pointed her toward the right hallway as though she were a complete outsider. At one point, she hesitated in front of a large conference room's doorway to empty the trash can, hearing muffled laughter and conversation inside. "Another new cleaning person. Bet she won't last more than a wee DB," a female manager chuckled. "Everyone wants to be at the top. Who'd bother sweeping floors?" Their words and glances passed straight through her. On this morning, for the first time in her life, Charlotte Benson truly felt forgotten, non-existent, in the house she once thought she knew inside and out. When lunchtime came and everyone else streamed out to eat, Charlotte sat alone in a cramped storage room. The hum of the coffee, a machine, and the clip-clop of heels echoing overhead. No more applause, no more admiring glances, just her and the reality that Charlie Baker, in some strange way, held up a mirror to the essence of power. When there's no title, no status, who are you in the eyes of others? From day one, Charlotte had understood that this invisibility wasn't just the janitor's plight. It was the silent, corrosive disease eating away at Bright Vision's heart. And this was only the beginning of the darkness she was about to confront. An invisible weight clung to Charlotte as she pushed the cart across the gleaming marble lobby. She carefully maneuvered along the main hallway, the same corridor that every Monday morning served as Bright Vision's leadership showcase. Familiar faces in suits flashed past her, their gazes glued to their phones without a single person noticing the cleaning lady bent over her work. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. From the far end of the hallway, the click-clack of high-heeled steps on the hard stone floor rang out, strong, steady, like a drumbeat announcing a cold performance. Linda Parker appeared, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, lips pressed into a firm line, gaze as sharp as a blade. Charlotte recognized her immediately. Bright Vision's chief operating officer, once considered an ally and a role model for the next generation of female leaders. Linda strode forward, one hand clutching a tablet, the other holding a steaming latte, not paying the slightest attention to Charlotte, who was bent over, scrubbing a stain near the elevator. But just then, Charlotte fumbled and dropped her mop. The loud clang echoed through the normally quiet space. Linda came to an immediate halt, her pale blue eyes sweeping over Charlie like they were examining an irritating obstacle. She lowered her voice, ice in every syllable. "Do you even know how to clean? Nobody here has time to redo whatever you mess up. If you can't handle it, I'll find someone else." Charlotte looked up. Their eyes met for a brief moment. In Linda's gaze, there was no recognition. She saw only a clumsy new janitor, an unremarkable person with no name, no face, no worth. Charlotte, on the other hand, saw everything she had never dared to admit. That cold indifference, that uncompromising command in Linda's tone, that arrogance fueled by unchecked power, qualities Charlotte herself, as CEO, had once entrusted to Linda. Linda shook her head in disgust, showing off her contempt without even trying to hide it. "Please don't create any more messes. I have far more important things to deal with." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking all the way down the hallway. A young sales associate passing by witnessed the scene, shrugged with a mocking grin, and stepped into the elevator, as if such conduct were perfectly normal at Bright Vision. Charlotte bent down to pick up the mop, her hands trembling momentarily. For years, she had believed Linda to be an inspiring leader, a powerful woman who spoke passionately about fairness and respecting every individual. And yet, with one small encounter, Linda's true face was revealed. Apathetic, harsh, dismissive of anyone deemed beneath her. That shock was not just a personal disappointment. It was a seismic shift in Charlotte's understanding of how power, when left unchecked, can destroy human dignity and trust. It was the first time she realized that behind slogans like empowerment and honoring people, a toxic culture had quietly taken root deep within the executive ranks. All morning long, Linda's presence haunted Charlotte. As she mopped the floors, Linda's icy words echoed in her mind, and she wondered, how many people here have swallowed their pride, been judged like that janitor, and never dared to speak up? And she recognized that her mission was no longer merely about checking the company culture. It was about pulling back the curtain on the perfect faces and polished names to expose every dark corner that she, as CEO, had once ignorantly overlooked. The cold voice of Linda still echoed in Charlotte's mind as she continued her monotonous rounds of cleaning, wiping glass doors, emptying trash bins, and arranging chairs in the cafeteria. It was here, in the noisy midday bustle, that truths came to light, truths Charlotte, as CEO, had never heard before. At lunchtime, the Bright Vision cafeteria was always packed, a cacophony of sounds, spoons clinking against trays, the coffee machine humming, conversations punctuated by bursts of laughter. Charlotte hunched over, clearing the last table in the row, and quietly listened to a group of mid-level managers seated at the table against the wall, the prime spot reserved for important people who wanted to eat lunch while discussing business without worrying about eavesdroppers. They paid no attention to the cleaning lady busy cleaning right beside them, treating her as if she were part of the furniture. "Hey, Mark, have you approved the list of candidates for Project Vision X yet?" Linda's voice rang out clearly, sharp as always, but this time with a rare hint of enthusiasm. Mark, the head of marketing, with his jet black hair and that confident smile of someone who knows exactly how much power he holds, squinted at his tablet and replied leisurely, "Just Ivy League kids, Linda. Why bother with those outdated folks here? The young ones are more marketable, fit our brand image better, and appeal to younger customers. What can those old gray-haired guys do besides telling war stories?" Linda laughed loudly on purpose, ensuring everyone around the table heard her. "Yeah, but they don't have the skills we need right now. Image has to come first. I'm tired of defending those old-timers. They resist change, and their ideas are always stuck in the past. No wonder our customers get annoyed." A younger manager, seated nearby, her blonde hair tied back, interjected with a tone trying to sound knowledgeable. "And what about that Raj Patel in engineering? I don't get why they're still keeping him. He talks to clients with that weird accent, makes everyone uncomfortable. Plus, his dressing style is ridiculously outdated. You can tell at a glance he doesn't fit our company's youthful vibe. Sending him to meet partners will just make us look bad." Mark curled his lips into a mocking smile. "You'll figure it out once you've been here a while. If you don't fit the culture, you get pushed out. Those old guys, like Raj, they'll be retiring early soon enough." Linda tapped her fingernails on the table, her tone completely nonchalant. "You know, we've got an opportunity for a staff reshuffle soon. We need to get rid of some dead weight while we can. Too many people think that seniority equals respect. I don't like that kind of quiet devotion. It doesn't help our brand. Now, customers want innovation. They want to see a dynamic, youthful team. If we keep those old-timers around, we'll end up embarrassing leadership sooner or later." Charlotte felt each word like a blade cutting into her heart. Her hands trembled as she piled up plates and bowls. Not from exhaustion, but from anger and disappointment. She thought of Raj Patel, the humble Indian-American engineer who quietly fixed software bugs, someone who had been with Bright Vision since its early days and never once complained. Now, because of his accent, his simple wardrobe, and his salt-and-pepper hair, Raj was becoming a casualty of the unspoken criteria, fitting the image matching the brand. Across the table, Linda continued, "This time, I'm also planning to cut some of the long-serving staff in operations. Take Sarah, for example. She's competent, but she doesn't look the part. She has no sense of style, and she can't talk with that Ivy League flair like those kids. Put her in a management role, and who's impressed? I prefer hiring attractive young people with a snazzy way of speaking. Anywhere we take them, they'll make an impression. As for skill, we can train them later." Mark chimed in, not bothering to hide his contempt. "Always talking about competence, but really you judge by facade. Clients don't care about old employees. They just want to meet the face of the brand." A female staff member, sitting quietly up to that point, spoke up, her voice trembling. "But Raj saved the entire project last year. Without him, engineering would have collapsed. If we only judge by appearance, is that fair to people like him?" Linda shot the woman a cold glare. "Fairness won't keep this company afloat. If you can't adapt, you'll find yourself looking for another job. Otherwise, you'll get pushed out anyway." Those words were like a hammer, sealing off any remaining hope. The atmosphere around the table suddenly grew heavy and icy. Charlotte felt as if she couldn't breathe, every cell in her body revolting against the naked dishonesty disguised as innovation, culture, and brand image. When the group of managers rose and left the table, Linda brushed past Charlotte without a second thought. No apology, no glance, only a scowl as if there were a smudge on her crisp white blouse. Linda, Mark, and the others exited the cafeteria, leaving behind a space that felt colder and emptier. Not because people had left, but because their presence had brought with it simmering prejudices and injustices, and the cruel laughter born from the suffering of those deemed insignificant. Charlotte stood there silently, feeling at once like an outsider and a would-be revolutionary. She realized that this toxic culture didn't spring from a few bad apples, but was nurtured by habits, prejudices, and the fear of genuine change. When appearance, credentials, ethnicity, and age become the sole yardsticks, then everyone who works quietly and devotedly like Raj and Sarah will forever remain on the fringes. That day, when her shift ended, Charlotte took home not only the smell of disinfectant and the grime on her hands, but also a heavy burden of sorrow. She understood that if change did not start with these small moments, these offhand remarks that seemed inconsequential, then sooner or later Bright Vision would lose its soul, the soul of those quiet individuals whose unwavering dedication truly sustained the company. Stepping out of the cafeteria, weighed down by the toxic chatter she'd just heard, Charlotte realized that Bright Vision's dark side went far beyond the brand image nonsense Linda and Mark had casually exposed. She faced that truth more clearly as soon as she returned to the tech floor, the very place she'd once proudly called the creative hub of the entire company as CEO. But in her role as Charlie, the ordinary janitor, Charlotte saw this space for what it truly was, a realm of shadows where the line between glory and oblivion had never felt so cold. Her feet had barely crossed the threshold of the main server room when she heard the mocking giggles of a cluster of young employees gathered around the coffee machine. Above the hushed buzz came the name Donna, spoken with derision. "Watch out. Donna's going to break the coffee machine again." A blonde-haired woman shrugged and replied, "Who was it last time that fried the circuit board?" A brown-haired young man joined in, nodding toward the far corner of the room. "Probably our tech grandma again. I don't get why our department even keeps a prehistoric dinosaur like that around." Charlotte glanced back and saw Donna Matthews, an experienced engineer in her 50s, her gray hair loose around her shoulders, her reading glasses perched low on her nose, quietly packing up her paperwork at a desk in the corner. Donna's face paled. Her hand trembled for a moment, but she merely pressed her lips together without a word, then slipped away from the group as though her shoulders bore 100 pounds. Charlotte also noticed the furtive, embarrassed glances from a few others in the room, but not a single person stepped up to defend her. Those harmless jokes, wrapped in youthful laughter, were laced with the poison of ageism. In a place once extolling generational diversity, Donna, someone who had been with Bright Vision since its founding days, had become a target of ridicule simply because she was no longer young, no longer on trend, and no longer fit the chic style of the newer managers. Charlotte quietly turned toward the maintenance area, where her task was to inspect and clean various electronic devices. In a small, dimly lit side room, she spotted Raj Patel, an older Indian-American engineer, seated at an aging computer. His silver-speckled hair caught the weak overhead light as he focused on a technical drawing on his monitor. Stacks of thick manuals and documents towered around him. Outside the windowed partition, Charlotte overheard two young managers, Brian Mitchell and Kyle Turner, speaking in low tones. I want this new project to be staffed entirely with young talent. Send Raj over to help with storage. He doesn't fit our client image anymore. And listening to his accent up front, people said it's hard on the ears. Kyle nodded coldly, adding, "Right. Plus, he's so old school, he won't embrace the new apps. Keep him on the team, and we'll all seem outdated in front of the partners." Charlotte felt each furrowed brow and icy remark strike Raj like an invisible blow. In these young managers' eyes, all of Raj's decades of experience and expertise had become an obstacle to sprucing up the roster. He himself seemed resigned to being sidelined. His shoulders slumped even further, his gaze lowered when he heard his name. No protest escaped his lips. Only the quiet sadness of someone who knew he was no longer valued. All afternoon, Charlotte moved through the engineering rooms, maintenance bays, and the hallways on the third floor, spaces filled with long-term employees who had once been the very foundation of Bright Vision, and she felt a pang of bitterness. The more years of experience someone had, the more easily they were pushed out. Those who had once been the company's right-hand experts were now mere silent shadows, isolated by cutting remarks, judging looks, and unspoken decisions that excluded them from new projects and creative teams. What hurt Charlotte most was how, coldly, the management system operated. No one directly insulted older employees or people of different backgrounds, but every whispered comment and every covert decision felt like a series of needles stabbing at the dignity and sense of belonging of people like Donna and Raj. In the youthful, dynamic culture that Bright Vision proudly promoted, anyone who didn't fit the brand image became expendable, no matter how devotedly they worked or how much they had contributed. The further she settled into her role as Charlie, the more Charlotte felt the biting chill of isolation and contempt, being treated like an outsider in the very organization she once believed was a close-knit family. She saw in Donna, Raj, and many other long-tenured employees a sense of defeat and quiet endurance, perhaps because they understood that speaking up now would only make them stand out even more, leading to deeper isolation. At day's end, while cleaning the staff break room, Charlotte spotted Donna quietly picking up the half-eaten remains of a sandwich, her gaze fixed on the window where the last glow of sunset faded over Bright Vision's gleaming glass towers. In another corner, Raj shut down his computer, locked the door to the tech lab, and walked out carrying his briefcase, an almost spectral figure. Those images of Donna and Raj haunted Charlotte long after she left the building, leaving behind a world of forgotten people who had once built this company but were now discarded without a second thought. It was in that moment that Charlotte realized every reform, every declaration of diversity and inclusion would be nothing more than lip service unless, in every room and every team, those invisible biases were confronted head-on. And if she did nothing, countless more Donnas, Raj, and anyone else deemed not a good fit would continue to be cast aside, silenced, shamed, and in pain, with nobody to speak up for them. The icy words of Linda still echoed in Charlotte's mind as she continued her monotonous janitorial duties, cleaning glass doors, emptying trash bins, and arranging chairs in the cafeteria. It was here, amidst the noisy lunch-hour crowd, that truths came to light, truths Charlotte had never heard in her CEO office. That afternoon, when she was cleaning the IT area, Charlotte immediately noticed the completely different atmosphere. Gone was the indifference competition, and haughty attitude she'd seen on the executive floors or in marketing. Instead, there was lively conversation, genuine laughter, and a spirit of open collaboration spreading through the small teams. At the center of that vibrancy was Henry Walker, a black IT engineer in his 30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with a hearty smile and eyes that shone with optimism and kindness. Henry wasn't a manager or a face of the company, but everyone knew him. As Charlotte wiped down a keyboard, she noticed Henry moving from desk to desk, helping colleagues, showing an intern how to reset a server, teaching a new coworker how to secure her account, and bending down to pick up a pen that had fallen from Charlotte's cart. A small gesture, but the first friendly